I'm going to call the meeting to order. And before we go into non-public, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. The pledge right here. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ask for a motion for the non-public.
Second.
Moved by Tom, seconded by Brody. Okay, all those in favor, Tom? Aye. Brody?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Dr. Jim?
Yep.
Jim Pittman? Yes. Charlene?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Dana is not here yet, and Wendy's not going to be here. So we're going to go into non-public. We'll be as quick as we can, and we'll be right back into this room. So.
Okay, I guess we're back. Thank you. Sorry it took a little longer than I anticipated. Okay, first item on the agenda that we'll go through is the agenda review. I'd like to add that. Article 9, the petition warrant article for, we are reaffirming our First Amendment rights. Like to add that on as an action item for the board to decide if they want to support or not support that, or have no indication on the warrant article itself. And we'll do that after the discussion on the Whalen article. Next item up is public input. Would anybody like to have public input at this point in time? Seeing none, we'll move right on. Okay, the next item is new position review. Go through that.
Sure. So you have in your packets budget proposal for positions, math coaches, 2 math coaches, and the curriculum project manager. So this item was requested for discussion and information. We have Dr. Hills present and Paul Femulari, our current curriculum project manager, if the board has any questions.
This was reviewed by the budget committee, and it's been brought to our attention that we didn't really give the rest of the board a full opportunity to discuss the positions themselves. So if anyone would like to ask some questions about that, please do it right now. Charlie?
Thank you. So one of the reasons, well, the main reason that I wanted to have this discussion is because it has been, for as long as I can remember, past practice for any positions that have been previously funded by grants, when those grants are expiring, discussion of continuation of those positions is supposed to come to the full board. And that didn't happen, and so I personally, and I think perhaps other people as well, would like to know, would like to know more about these positions and why they are now being, because the grants are expiring, they're now, to continue them, we're asking the taxpayers to fund them. I was noticing that the curriculum project manager position was originally funded with ESSER monies, and so I have a couple of specific questions. I would like to know what the original duration of that position was to be under the ESSER grant, and if it's something that needs to be continued, why it needs to be continued. Also, I'd like to know if it was appropriately, the fact that it was funded previously with ESSER funds, I would like to know why it won't continue to be funded through the ESSER monies that are available. And I had asked for whatever presentation materials that you had provided to finance be provided to the full board prior to the meeting. And what I see is a very brief description but I don't see any kind of, detailed explanation with, giving what sort of assessment rubrics you developed to determine how effective it's been and why it needs to continue. So those are some specific questions that I have. Thank you.
So, yes, in one moment. A couple things I just wanted to add here were, yes, the ESSER funds covered these positions for 2 years. This would be the end of the 2 years. The remaining of ESSER funds, Kathy O can correct me if I'm wrong, the board voted to use the rest of the ESSER funds for HVAC in our schools.
Correct.
So there is no extra ESSER funds for those positions. And I also want to just bring to your attention, and Kathy O can speak to this, this is the justification from our curriculum folks, and Dr. Hills can speak to that with respect to your questions. But there's also these other sheets, the new staff request sheet here with the dollar amounts is the second page. And then Kathy O also provided the proposed budget with and without the new staffing proposals. So I think between the two of them, that should be really helpful. So which would you like to hear from first? Dr. Hills?
Probably yes.
Okay.
Is it on? Yes, it is. So, yes, you have the rationale form or proposal that I put forward. When we proposed at the beginning of receiving those ESSER funds, the position of the high school curriculum project manager, we knew that we would be limited by time with ESSER funding. We also know that the project itself would take longer than 2 years, especially given the absences that we had last year, and knowing that the person who was going to be filling the role, in this case this is Paul, would need to, during the first few months and almost half a year, get to know our system, get to know our teachers, get to know our curriculum, and where we were in the process. So in the first year and a half, Paul has done a wonderful job. He has, for all of the core content areas and world language, he has helped those departments draft competencies that are pretty much in their final stages. This year, he has started working with the ancillary departments, family and consumer science, health, things of those non-core areas. Last year, we also worked with not only all the academic coordinators, but also team leaders from within those content areas to learn more about assessment literacy, to really learn about depth of knowledge. We also extended that to the full faculty. So we've been working, and Paul really in the day-to-day, on the ground, in the trenches, working with the departments on looking at assessments. And he's really starting the assessment piece now, but developing competencies, digging into those standards, understanding what depth of knowledge is. And we know that with the superintendent's goal of moving the high school toward competency-based learning, that we have some work to go. We do need to do more around assessment literacy with the full staff, aligning our assessments to those competencies, making sure that they are quality assessments. We need to do work around some of our grading policies and reporting policies, making sure that they are aligned to best practices. And then the biggest piece is how does this locally report out to families? How will we make a hybrid version that's a good fit for Governor Wentworth, that brings the best of competency-based learning while also making it feasible for those who are going on to college. And that's one of the bigger pieces because it involves rolling it out to families and the larger public. And so we do have some work ahead of us. We've had a great start with Paul, and we don't want to slow the work back down in losing him. And so we've looked to extend his position until that, to continue the project.
Thank you for that brief summary. What sort of assessment rubric did you develop when this position was first formed to determine the efficacy of the program, and could we have those results?
So we don't have a rubric per se, but we have indicators of what need to happen. For example, we needed to draft and create competencies. We needed to develop with teachers an understanding of competency-based education. We needed to have an understanding among teachers of formative versus summative assessment and best practices in assessment in general, things like retakes. We needed to have an understanding of depth of knowledge and really being able to look at standards, especially in light of some changing standards, such as social studies, which are in the process of being changed at the state level, to really dig in and understand what are the standards asking of our students, what are the skills and the knowledge and the rigor, the depth of knowledge that we need to make sure our students are achieving, and do our assessments and thus our instruction align to that, match that. So rather than a rubric per se, it's more of a series of steps of, almost like a checklist. Have we been able to do this? Do we have a set of working competencies? Yes. Do we have a developing sense of assessment literacy? Yes. Have we given teachers professional development around depth of knowledge? Yes. Are we guiding them through time to dig into the standards to really understand what is requested of them? Yes. So we've been able to go along and check that off.
So I think what I'm hearing is a lot of maybe anecdotal information, or a lot of, we feel as if we were making progress. I guess I'm more interested in specifics. For example, were we as a district so behind the 8 ball in terms of incorporating competency-based education that, in however many years, we haven't been able to do it? So, you can have the microphone too. Yeah, I guess.
One person at a time.
I mean, at least with the math coaches, we have a way to be able to say, okay, we can show they've been effective. Look at our math test scores. Our math test scores are getting better, unless they're not, in which case that would say to me that we have some issues with the adequacy of these extra positions, shall we say. Years ago, we worked very hard to establish, core knowledge based on, what was coming out of Concord and whatnot. And so, talking about determining what competencies we need, it seems as if that is kind of an overlap and kind of and redundancy, I guess I would say. So, it's still not clear to me why it seems as if, as director of curriculum, you need what seems to me to almost be an assistant, because he's the curriculum project manager. I mean, what specific projects are being managed, and how, and if you knew at the beginning that it wasn't going to be able to be done in 2 years, I guess I'm wondering why you didn't ask for ESSER funds to fund this particular position for 3 years or 4 years. It just seems to me a little lacking in concrete information. So I hope it's not, I was hoping for clarification in that, perhaps when you made your presentation to the Finance Committee, that you had that same kind of compelling data or specificity, because, the full board needed to have that presentation prior to our approving it being in the budget.
So we don't have data on the efficacy of it because we don't have that system in place. And so this project is really to put into place a competency-based learning system at the high school. And so again, the data that we have is based on a traditional system, and so until we have the structures in place, we have no data as to the efficacy of it.
I think if I could make a comment, Charlene, it took a lot of convincing for me to agree to this in the Finance Committee hearing, but I did agree to it because to funding this position and pulling it in for one more year, because it is our explicit goals of our superintendent and our board to move to a competency-based education model. It is also a requirement of the state. We are not there yet. The high school is very far behind, and if Paul can help us get there in the next year, that is it. We should not withhold resources that are going to allow our superintendent and our administrators to accomplish the goals that they have set out to do to bring us up to compliance with state standards. And the lack of performance data is concerning, but at the same time, in a short evaluation period, you're also, as Katie Hills indicated, looking more at outputs rather than data indicators. And she listed a lot of outputs. And so I do support this position for 1 year with the expectation and that this is going to help us get the high school onto the same competency-based education model that we have at K-8, if that helps.
And I didn't hear any outputs.
So outputs are those almost like task items that are accomplished, Katie, like the
Developing the competencies.
exactly, the checklist items.
Checklist?
Right, so
You want a copy of
so
that?
that's instead of data indicators, which are like differences in scores and
I can
grades.
write it out. I can write it out.
Because that's what I had asked for in one of my emails. I had asked for all of the documentation and information you had provided to finance to be brought to the full board.
I've provided nothing different to you than I did to the Finance Committee. I spoke to it then, but I've not, I can write out a list for you if you'd like.
May I, Jack? What I remember from the Finance Subcommittee and the reason why, Stephanie and I eventually were like, okay, we'll try it for another year, was part of our contingency was essentially, can you show us, what was done previously during the next budget cycle, and can you show us what was done over the past year, and then can you show us a framework of how much more needs to be done? And I think, I think it's more than fair to ask for those sorts of things, and I agree with you, Charlene. And so those systems weren't currently in place, what we were told, and it was pretty short notice, and so we had to have some faith in our staff and our administration, as we should, and trust but verify. We'll get that verification, or if we don't, then we reassess like every budget cycle. That's how I looked at it, and that's why I ultimately supported, adding, keeping the position in, and why I supported the Finance Subcommittee's meeting minutes and report to the school board. So I agree with you, and I'm sure Katie hears us Mrs. Hills hears us loud and clear that she's going to show us what was done previously, what was done over the last year, and then what needs to be done in the future, so we can make that assessment. And I really do appreciate that you'll do that, and that our administration will work to get that information to us. Dr. Hills, I'm so sorry, Dr. Hills. I didn't want to call you Katie because that seemed way too informal.
Jim?
Okay, great, thank you. And Dr. Hills, thank you for being here this evening to bring everybody up to speed. I also, being on the Finance Committee, recall your presentation, and there were a couple of things that I'll say turned the tide, but I don't think I was a doubting Thomas from the beginning. One was that this was an effort to fill a gap that I believe you characterized had been trying to gain some traction for many years through other efforts and went nowhere. So finally, we were able to bring Paul on board and actually start moving forward with it for something that was required. And Charlene, I think to recall the ESSER funds each year had specific requirements, you might remember, and I don't think a lot of those monies could be carried forward. So had we said, oh, this is going to take 4 years, not 2 years, I don't think the ESSER program allowed us, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe they allowed us to extend them forward. So that was not a vehicle that was available to us. And I think I'd just like to add that Dr. Hills is the person who's on point, the expert. I don't know what she knows, so I have to trust her. And if she says this is working and it's important, and we, even if we don't have specific numbers that we can point to and say, look, you know, her assessment is that we're making progress, and I believe her.
I guess my one question is, and it's to both of you, how much help are you guys receiving? Is there anyone on staff at the New Hampshire Department of Education to work with school districts on this kind of stuff to make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel, that there might be other, is there any help from Concord, or are we just on an island, every school district on its own, crossing their fingers, hoping we're, you know, kind of getting this right or that we're moving the right direction?
Well, Brody, you know that New Hampshire is the state of local control. The state has model competencies. They have districts who have done it. And so while the state has no one that has been sort of the point person to help districts with it, I am part of the Lakes Region CIA group. We talk monthly. Paul has gone through this in his previous districts. He has his own contacts. So we're not on an island, but our island doesn't necessarily include the state, DOE.
Disappointing, but, you know, not
They're
disappointed in
understaffed,
anyone
you
here,
know.
disappointed in the state, or...
Okay, one more.
Well, I actually have a couple, and part of it goes back to, since there isn't, I appreciate the fact that the Finance Committee was privy to this discussion. It's unfortunate that the full board was not given the same information prior to our voting on the budget. When you say that when the grant was originally accepted for 2 years, you already knew that it wasn't going to be, the work wasn't going to be finished in 2 years. I think I heard you say that. And so what sort of assurance will we have that one more year funded by the taxpayers is going to get the job done? My concern is that, you know, there's specific tasks that Paul is helping with. Well, he's not helping with it. He's been hired to do it for, I think it was $105,000 a year. Are we going to be looking at continuing this position in, you know, for all eternity, or is this, you know, are these tasks, once they're done, which I think from what I read in the Finance Committee notes, minutes, you're expecting, you know, to have one more year and then do an assessment at that point in time. How will we know, and how will we be able to explain to our constituents that this is not going to be a new layer of bureaucracy or administration that we're adding to our bottom line every year? That's the one question. And a more specific question is, when you say unpacking standards, what does that mean?
That means really, when you look at a standard, an academic standard, it can be intense. There's a lot in it. There's a lot of skills that are inherent in it. There's potentially a lot of academic content in it. So unpacking a standard is really figuring out what is the standard asking of our students, what are the skill sets, what is the academic content, and what's that level of rigor? Is this something that, you know, is low in terms of depth of knowledge or high in terms of depth of knowledge? So that is the process of unpacking standards and then figuring out how do we help students get to achieving that standard, which aligns with our assessment and ultimately our instruction. As to your first question, we'll know, I mean, really, we know that the end goal is to have a competency-based system of learning at the high school. And so we will know we have achieved that when we have that in place. We are already on our way. We've made good momentum so far, which is why I'd like to continue. You know, to lose Paul now would be to lose someone, again, who's in there on a day-to-day basis working with teachers, who has developed their trust, who has an office right there where they can go when they hit a snag, who can push the work along as well as guide the work along. So, you know, it would continue without Paul, but it would be a slower process, and we know that with the superintendent's goals, this is a priority, and so we know that we've got that momentum, we've got the support of district administration, and we can keep moving to make what is best practice happen more quickly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Katie. Dr. Hill. Thank you for being here, Paul, as well. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to the Pop Whalen petition. One of the reasons, or the main reason that this is on the agenda for tonight, when the board has not taken a vote one way or the other to support the petition warrant article, and we're here to discuss that. This is an action item for the board. One of the concerns that I've had with this, first of all, the petition warrant article is in conflict with the MOU from a dollar and cent standpoint. The MOU that the town of Wolfeboro has provided calls for a single payment of $250,000. The warrant article calls for 2 payments of $150,000 each. But the MOU and the agreement is between the town of Wolfeboro and the school district, not between the Friends of the Pop Whalen Arena. So there's 2 different entities here trying to raise the same amount of money, or similar amounts of money. The MOU that was returned to us includes a section that we don't agree with. There's been no further discussion on that with the town of Wolfeboro as far as moving forward with this. So it's, even though I understand the Friends are looking for support on this, I'd ask the board for additional comments and then a motion to support and not support the warrant article as is presented. Brody?
Thank you, Jack. Where I kind of have some trouble is some of the procedure that this has gone through. And it seems like at some points, it seemed like this board was considering entering into an MOU. At some points, it seemed like we weren't going to enter into an MOU. At some points, it seemed like we were going to have a warrant article. And ultimately, you know, we came to the realization, you know, no action had really been taken formally, but that there wouldn't be a warrant article. I'm happy that, you know, the Friends were able to have enough time to put in a petition warrant article. I think it was important to them, and as taxpayers, they have a right to have a say in what funds are raised or not raised in the school district. I guess my ultimate concern is that there was a number of information that we requested from the town of Wolfeboro regarding trying to make the best deal for the taxpayers of the entire school district, because we don't just represent Wolfeboro, we represent 6 towns, and we want to be able to weigh the benefits or the pros and the cons of whether a rental agreement long-term would be better, whether this agreement would be better, and a whole host of other things. Eventually we got the petition warrant. I have some concerns with how the warrant is written. I think it suggests that the public body has a number of legal abilities to bind us to enter into an agreement, into an MOU, which in my personal belief shouldn't be the case. I think splitting up the money into 2 years, I have a personal problem with that because I'm not sure if we're even allowed to bind a future town meeting to have to raise that money. So there's just a number of legal questions at this point. There's a number of other questions I wish the town of Wolfeboro had answered, because I would have loved to have found out that the $250,000 warrant article was the most economical and the best deal for the taxpayers for the school district rather than a rental agreement. But without any kind of idea of rental prices and what the cost would be, to be able to show the pros and cons, to be able to show the cost to the taxpayers, to be able to sell it to them ultimately, it makes this board's job, and I think also maybe in the Friends of Pop Whalen, it'll make your job very difficult to sell outside of the town of Wolfeboro to the other 5 member communities. So that's currently where I sit. I'm kind of conflicted. I wish we had some more info from the town of Wolfeboro. That's not on the Friends of Pop Whalen. You guys have done a great job fundraising and pushing this project along. But, you know, the question is, should the school district be entering into an MOU, and should we have a warrant article that reflects the money that's needed to enter into that MOU? And at this point, I mean, Jack's right. There's a whole bunch of conflictions, still a lot of open questions. And I personally also wish that a petition warrant article was done before the voters in Wolfeboro approved the Pop Whalen project. So then we would have been maybe, you know, in discussions while the plans are being finalized for Pop Whalen, and also had a more of a seat at the table in the discussion of the construction project, that it could have been contingent on the passage of the Wolfeboro warrant article. So, I mean, there's just a number of things, and that's just my reservations. As someone who loves Pop Whalen, used it my entire life growing up, and still uses it to this day, and who's, you know, someone in Wolfeboro stood on the sidewalk with Vic holding signs, you know, telling people to vote for the Pop Whalen project in Wolfeboro. So it's not for a lack of love in the pop, it's for a lack of love in the process. So.
Thank you, Bodie. I think one of the other things I want to make sure that everybody out there understands, this is not for or against any of the sports programs at Pop Whalen. We are in full support of all of the sports programs, whether it be hockey or any other program out there. We fully support all of the sports in the Governor Wentworth School District, so it has nothing to do with the sports and the sports teams. Linda, give you a
Just let me speak to the town's position. The town put out a warrant article for the full amount, and the taxpayers are paying $4+ million. The Friends of Pop were willing to raise another 2.7, and that's what they're trying to do. And so, yes, it's our facility, but they're the other arm to raise the 2.7, and these locker rooms were part of that 2.7 that they were trying to raise. So that's why it's kind of conflicted. It's going to go forward whether this warrant article passes or not. It's what your teams are going to be able to have and use. The locker room will be there, you'll have benches, you'll have books, that's it. So this was an opportunity to give you a different type of locker room. It's happening, it's going forward. But it was the hope that you and Kingswood would like a special locker room that would go for all your teams, and we're allowing you the opportunity to join us and put it out to the voters. They may want to join us, or they may not, but this is their opportunity to come join us.
Thank you, Linda. And I think, you know, part of the issue, I think Bodie hit on it a little bit too. If this was part of the Friends' goal in their raising $2.7 million, why wasn't that brought to the board before the vote even took place in Wolfeboro? This is part of the problem that we've had. The other thing is certainly when we met at the Pop Whalen initially, the superintendent, myself, and Jim Pittman, we said, well, what if the voters reject this, or what if we don't approve this? And the answer at that point was, well, the lockers just won't be built. That was the answer we got, which I know that's not the case. The lockers are going to be there whether they're funded by the school district or not, whether the lockers are in there at school district expense, or however the process is. But it was kind of that, well, if you don't pay it, we're just not going to build them. It was part of the wrong answer to start with. And we asked the town by November of last year to give us a full breakdown of the rental agreements for ice time, for use of the facility, after, in other times of the year for any of the other activities that might be there. None of that was forthcoming from the town. So it put us in a very awkward position to look at a warrant article and say, we support this because look at all the great things that the Pop Whalen Arena is going to do for the district. Other than hockey, there's nothing that we know of because the town hasn't provided that information. So, we're in a very awkward position. We support hockey, we support all the sports programs. And I think it would be great, again, if some of this stuff had been brought to the board well before the vote was taken last year to even do the Pop Whalen Arena as part of that $2.7 million. Victor?
I am Victor Drew with Friends of Pop. So I'll give you a little history. So I've been working with the school and the athletic director, the game cell guy. We've been working on this with Governor Wentworth for 3 years. So my apologies for not knowing the process. I was kind of guided in a manner to take the route I did until I found out all of a sudden magically that, oh, you didn't come to the school board and lay out the plan to the school board. So at that point, the water was already over the dam, right? And so we're at a point where, okay, let's get to the school board, figure out what needs to be done. So a lot of what we are throwing out there is smoke right now, is smoke. It's not reality. So that's the first thing that we need to clean up. The second thing is when we did this, when we planned this 3 years ago, we laid this out. We said Kingswood has existing lockers at Pop Whalen. Brewster has existing lockers that are dedicated to Pop Whalen. And there's public rooms at Pop Whalen. So we laid it out. We got with the athletic directors. You have girls programs, you have boys programs. So we basically designed this. They had the floor plans, I'd say going back to probably 2014. Different versions of the floor plans of the same building that's being done. But essentially, you didn't receive that information. Again, my apologies, but that's been out there for a long time. And the Friends of Pop was officially formed in 2019, and we went through to see if we could garner support, get the drawings, get the town behind it. By the time we got through the process and figured out everything structurally that we could done in the building, we had to stop that process, which was last October, November. We were getting ready to build it before we missed our deadline for last year. If you guys think for a minute that I was going to stop the bus and say, gee whiz, we need to go talk to the school so that they can put their input in and decide how they want to rebuild this building that's been designed and priced and set up for a warrant article, you'd be mistaken, because that was not going to happen. Even if I knew that was the process at that time, you guys might have been horrified, but we know what it takes, what the locker rooms take, we know what your needs were, we've known them for years. That stuff's never changed. So, as we are, what we did with Pop Whalen was we took the old building and said, what's it going to take to put this thing back together so the roof isn't leaking, so that it's a real facility. And that was 4.2. The expansion of the lockers and such was 2.7, which is Linda noted, was the portion that the Friends of Pop picked up. We said, okay, we're going to do this. We've talked to Kingswood, we've talked to Brewster, they know, we took the square footage price and said it's $250,000, $250 a square foot to do this work. You guys basically have a little over 1,000 square feet. That's where the $250,000 came from, which is in the MOU that you guys have. So I do know that regarding the response from the town, I did get notified that it was late. Their response, but it's my understanding that they did respond back. And you guys said, well, I got it late, so I'm not going to act on it. But I believe that one paragraph you had a problem with, they either agreed to, but I know they responded to it. And that was like early December, they missed by a week or so. So I know that part's been done. So, when we met, I think August, September, you guys came back, you wanted clarification on the MOU, you wanted clarification on pricing for hourly rates. Well, the town had already gone with this project in July. So the fact to go build in a user fee or something like that isn't a possibility. That ship sailed in July. So it became, okay, well, the Kingswood or Governor Wentworth wants the locker facilities, and it's $250,000. So that's the number. So there's, to build it into user fees, unless you want to create some other agreement with the town, that's fine. But the Friends of Pop are the ones that you pay the 2.7. So then when we get into the comment that was made, well, the lockers just won't be built. The physical facility is built, the expansion wing is built, the rooms are carved out, and there's 4 rooms that we're not fitting up there, 4 block walls, but they're not finished, they're not near to be finished. So those right now, from the Friends of Pop perspective, are not going to be utilized. They're not going to be utilized by Kingswood or anyone else. They're empty. They're empty roads until someone comes up with some dough. So, we need to dispel that, oh, we're just going to go in and use them, because that's not the way they're set up. There's nothing in there. There's no door in there. There's nothing in there. So, that was not an incorrect statement. That was made back in July or August when we made it. So, anyway, my goal is, when we wrote up, in addition to that, we went to the Booster Club and we said, hey, we finished the floors, we get you your rooms, you guys have a life of the building, an MOU for 40 years. It's going to cost another $50,000 or $60,000 to fit up these rooms, front lockers, benches, hooks, all your stuff for the 2 teams. So 30,000 a team, 28 to 30 is our number currently. So when Friends of Pop, when you guys decided not to do a warrant, and we wrote it, we added 50,000 to help fit those up. So that's your dollar difference between the 250 and the 300. But basically, we're bridging the part that we think the boosters wouldn't be able to cover. That's the real number for the lockers. It's 250 for the MOU for the cost of construction, and about 50 or 60,000 for the fit up of the rooms, all in. So that's where that number came from. So anyway, as far as the uses go for the off-season and other uses, I mean, there's great meeting rooms in there. There's a ton of stuff that's going to be available. The town's still working on programming. We're hoping to bring in pickleball in April, other things it could be used for. About 2 weeks ago, I got the occupancy for the building, and it's rated a little over 900. So, I mean, there's some tremendous events that could be held there that are, way more than any other. I mean, we have essentially 40,000 square feet of facility there. So, hopefully, we get the vision of what this thing was really intended for. But there's a ton of use that I think is not, this isn't just for Wolfeboro, this is for the community. I was there a week and a half ago, and there were probably 40, little kids from Tuftonboro in there going in, there's a whole line of them up the door. So, it's just great to see, some of the stuff that's going on there, and I know other schools are using it as well. But anyway, I hope that answers some of the questions and stuff, and I certainly would like you guys to, look at this and to take a no vote, and I know it makes us an uphill battle. And I don't think that's what I'm up for.
Thank you, Victor. One question, I guess, if regardless of the board supports or not supports, if the taxpayers support the warrant article, based on what you just said, Pop Whalen would then furnish these locker rooms. That wouldn't be the school district's responsibility then. If we raise the full 300,000, the Pop Whalen, the Friends of Pop Whalen would then fit up the locker rooms.
Yes.
Okay. Then the other concern again I have is the money's being raised for the Friends. However, we don't have an agreement with the town of Wolfeboro to use the facility. The MOU has not been finalized. So that's a concern, because the money's going to the Friends, but the contract is between the school district and the town of Wolfeboro.
I don't differ. I understand there's some semantics going on between the two. From a Friends of Pop Whalen perspective, if the school district, the voters approve today to write this check, I don't ever assume that government or school district is going to send the Friends of Pop Whalen a check, and I'm going to turn around and give it to the town. You guys are going to give it to the town. I'm going to know, I'm the Friends, I'm going to know that you appropriated the dollars. I'm going to know that it went to the town, that you guys worked it out over town and the district, your finances. And that would come off from my slate as far as my agreement with the town. That's how I see this.
Yeah, I certainly understand that. I think the money is one issue. The agreement to even use the facility is a completely separate issue. Because if we,
you guys had one paragraph that was very benign.
well, yeah, the one paragraph basically in question was that we said the agreement is for basically 40 years of the life of the facility, that type of wording, and they came back and said they kind of took the 40 years out and said we'll review it after 1 year.
You should have gotten one that said 40 years, because I was on the board when we said that. And the only thing in there was, I think, a 2-year, and it said review, and I think it was to see how things were going, and we may need to word that differently, but it was for 4 years, and that should have come to you. If you didn't get one that said 40 years.
I do have that copy now.
We're talking about item number 9.
Right, item number 9, and let me just read it to you, because this is part of the concern. Representatives from the licensee and licensor shall meet prior to the 2024-2025 ice season to discuss and make recommendations to the governing bodies. These recommendations will be focused on observations made during the first full year of operation and shall focus on addressing any need for operational modifications associated with this agreement. What does that mean?
I think it was to sit down and meet and talk about how the season went and if there are any issues.
And what about money? I mean,
You pay ice time. You paid ice time for years.
right, but what is your budget set where ice time? We know we paid ice time last year. Ice time included the use of the locker rooms and all that stuff, which that was just an accommodation because that was the way it was run. Is there a budget or a proposed inflationary process in the ice time based on what you're doing with the arena now? And that's one of the questions that the town couldn't answer at that when we first said, what's your budget going forward? And if your budget, all of a sudden, the use of the ice, the new ice machines, all this stuff, if that's considerably more than what it was in the past, where do we fit into that discussion on what we pay for ice time?
Finishing up this year, you're going to pay exactly what the rate was. Then we haven't run the facility, and we're going to sit down and take a look at the expenses, and based on what it costs to run, I would assume there'll be some adjustments. But we haven't even set those rates because we're trying to get a handle on a brand new building, how much electricity, how much is it going to cost to do that, and we will probably set that in the next month or so. But we don't have it now because we're still trying to get that based on the operational costs.
I realize I'm a little in the middle. Actually, I am in the middle. But regarding our original wording in the MOUs that they came to me originally, we reviewed them. It basically said for the lifetime of the building. When we were talking about a lifetime, we were like, how long is this building going to last? And it's going to last for 30 years. We think 37 years. We think this is 35 to 40 years is a safe assessment. So we had put in lifetime. I think when the school district came back originally, you said, I want a term. I want to know what is lifetime. Is it? And I think that's where the first 40 years came from. And then lawyers got involved, and lawyers write paragraphs that you can't decipher, like that one right there that you just read. So anyway, I think this can be simplified, but the intent was that this would be a lifetime. Now regarding the ice rates, so Poplar ice rate today is $2.15 an hour. The very lowest other rate in the state of any other municipal rate other than a couple of private schools is $2.60 an hour. So we're about $45 lower per hour than anyone else around. Friends of Pop, one of the things we built this building, the Wolfeboro Capital Improvement Committee asked us to do a budget and projection, figure out what the utilization rates were going to be and how are we going to pay for this, right? Because the operation of the POP is an enterprise fund. It's not a taxpayer-operated venue. So when we see that in the municipal electric department and the wastewater treatment plant, or the water
Water,
department.
sewer, electric, and power.
So those have to fund themselves as they go. What we were able to do, so what the Friends of Pop has done is when we came in, we pushed on, we've got co-ed hockey started this year. We had one men's league last year. We've got two men's leagues this year. We've introduced figure skating coming back. We're talking, I mentioned pickleball earlier. It looks like just when this winter shuts down, we're going to have a two-week dry out. Our goal is to put pickleball in there to get started, and then working on the other programs that would flow to make sure that this place is financially stable for a long period of time. In addition to that, just the banner sales and getting board advertisements and things, the town had been collecting $3,000 to $5,000 a year in advertising revenue on the original budget that's gone on for the last bunch of years. We sold a little over, we're close to $45,000 to $50,000 in advertising revenue annually. So our goal as Friends of Pop is to make this place go. And whether it's adding revenue from, it's items like that, it's advertising dollars where you're not selling ice, so I don't have to come back to you and say, gee Liz, we've got a 20% increase on your ice rates this year. And so will there be ice rate increases? Yes, I think there will be, just because we are well behind any other venue in the state by like 25-30%. But I'd like to see the program, and what I would be advocating for is for the town to take those incrementally at some, 2%, 3%, some smaller increases. We know that there will be inflation, but the goal is to look at this budget, see what it does, and keep it as safe and stable. And we've been fortunate that we've had tons of businesses and things that come out and support it and help drive. We're hoping to make this thing really work well. So that's the goal.
All right, thank you. Brody? Yeah, I'll be quick. In many ways, I'm sympathetic to your sentiments, especially the feeling of being tossed around in some of the missed signals, because, at least personally, there are a lot of times where this was a very moving target, and there was a lot of information and communication on specific things that weren't as relevant that we needed to make the decision, and then lack thereof on the other things. And I don't think it's incumbent on the Friends of Pop Whalen to have produced some of that information. We asked for it from the town of Wolfeboro. Maybe the information didn't exist, but at least knowing it didn't exist, that's not on you or the Friends of Pop Whalen. And so I don't want you to think that that we're saying no or that we're criticizing lack of information on your organization. You guys have done an amazing job helping operate the pop, helping make a business plan with the town of Wolfeboro. I mean, frankly, the building wouldn't be rebuilt at this point if it wasn't for the Friends of Pop Whalen. I don't think the town would be able to bond a project that big, and I think it would have been very difficult. But the biggest issue I have is, I've been approached by people in town or people on the on the board of the Friends of Pop Whalen are heavily involved that really want to see this done because in Wolfeboro we're very passionate about Pop Whalen. We have many people in Tuffham who are passionate about Pop Whalen, but we represent 6 towns. And I had someone in West Ospey explain to me, why should a portion of my school taxes go towards Pop Whalen, which is 35, even in some areas West Ospey, 40 minutes away from their home, when it's an equidistance drive or closer to go to the Ham Arena up in Conway. Think about New Durham too. It's faster for them to go to Rochester. People who live on the Ridge or on the Farmington line. Areas of Brookfield, it's equidistance to go to Rochester or to the Pop. And so even some people in Tuftonboro might be closer if they want to go use the, you know, very temporary rough and ragged Moltenboro public rink that they have there. I don't know if you've ever skated there, but you know, after one skate you need to get new blades probably. They're so freaking dinged up. But at any rate, people in our community the Pop isn't as much of a magnet as I thought it was, as being someone from Wolfeboro who's very supportive of Pop Whalen. So I find a hard time, let me put it this way, if this school board was a board just for Wolfeboro, I'd be like, you know, this shouldn't have been a question, of course, but when it's 6 towns that we all need to represent equally, and we need to talk about, you know, how do I justify taking a portion of someone's tax money and putting it towards a project, a building in a town that they may rarely even visit, that they rarely associate with, it becomes much more of a struggle, and I have to represent those other towns equally too. And so for that reason, I mean, I wish we had more information. I'm not going to vote no, I'm going to abstain. I think there were some things where if we had better communication, a lot of these questions could have been solved, and you know, I think this would have been a lot different. One thing I do want, though, to make sure that all the taxpayers and residents are treated justly who want this or don't want this project is, I'd like to know if we have any kind of formal legal opinion on the petition warrant, so the taxpayers and the residents have an ability to make the amendments on the deliberative floor. I don't know if we need to vote as a board to release that, but you know, if we need to go into non-public.
Kathy has some information on that.
Okay.
I did submit the petition to our legal counsel the next morning after it was given to us at the board meeting. It's about 4 paragraphs long, and I'll simply sum up what the attorney stated, that the way it's written, and it's written for $300,000 over a course of 2 years, makes it sound like it's to borrow money, which leads to a bond article. And with that, the bond article requires is a different RSA, requires 7 days prior to notification in a paper, 7 days prior notification of a bond hearing, and then all of the procedures that have to go along with that. The petition was submitted to the board on the last day or the day before the last day of petitions. Right. And therefore, because of those 7-day prior and bond hearings, those were completely missed. So this isn't a viable petition warrant article. So therefore, at the deliberative session, the petition can be changed so long as it doesn't change the intent for what it's for.
Would it be in order to make a motion to release that to the public or to those that would like it?
Yeah, I think the public should have all the information that is required for, you know, a valid vote.
Yeah, I just think it's usually a formality. A board votes to release its public. You know, the legal input it's gotten from its council. Usually, you have a vote that's at least from, you know, watching other boards and how the town of Wolfeboro operates. Yeah. So I would make that motion if it's in order.
I certainly think it is in order. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Brody, seconded by Tom.
I'll just speak real briefly. I just think it's just fair to them. You know,
why don't you state the motion as you'd like it?
Yeah, to release the legal opinion on the Pop Whalen petition warrant to the public and any other organizations that would like to read it. And I'll speak to it, and yep. You seconded that.
I did.
I just think it's just to treat you guys justly, so that if it does pass and you guys do end up getting the public support, that there's no legal questions, that it becomes clear that it's pretty, you know, cut and dry, that you guys are able to, if you justify it to all 6 towns, that all 6 towns, all the voters there, that they're able to agree with you, and they do believe that this is a worthy investment for the school district to make in the town of Wolfeboro's capital project for the Pop Whalen Ice Arena, then that you guys have a good, clean warrant that's presented to the voters, and then also that we can act upon when we need to expend the money to the town of Wolfeboro after we, you know, finish on a renegotiating MOU if the petition warrant passes. So I just want us to treat you justly, that's all.
Just quickly, so when you guys had decided not to do the warrant, I took we decided to split the 300 into 2 payments because we thought we were making it easier for the voters and the taxpayers. That's why we split it, was not, I understand now that we're basically committing the district to the second year and we can't do that. So we'll be happy to show up at the deliberative section and essentially strike the last sentence. So we understand that where that went wrong and we were trying to make it easier. So,
I appreciate it.
Charlene?
So,
I guess I have 3 questions. The first question, well, we don't have a signed MOU yet with the town of Wolfeboro, which to me is a little problematic. But I draw your attention on number, I don't know, I know the board has copies. If we look at number 5, item B, it says licensor shall supply security camera coverage of the halls outside the locker rooms for review by the licensee upon discovery of theft or property damage within the locker rooms. And I guess I just need some clarification. It's my understanding that at a selectmen's meeting, the town manager made a comment to the effect that, oh, maybe we're not going to install security cameras after all. So I want to know, which would violate the MOU, which we haven't signed yet.
What he was saying, we do not have security cameras in the facility, or were they budgeted, was what he said at the selectmen's meeting. If we got into the MOU and we negotiated and we needed them, then we'd have to work that out, or whether we could work some other agreement. Right now, programmed into the building, there are no security cameras, and that's what he was talking about.
So that means that item 5B is incorrect.
We haven't finished it. I think the problem is we haven't finished negotiating the contract, the MOU. And yes, that is something we were going to have to talk about. Right. So when you say we don't have an MOU, we don't. We have discussions and some work to do to make it so it would work for both entities, I think.
Okay.
And that's one of them. We have to figure out where we want the cameras, what it would cost, whether we can work that out. Yep.
Okay. My next question is, I'm sorry, we were still discussing, we haven't voted on releasing the legal opinion. So my discussion item for that is, before we can vote to do that, do we need any kind of agreement from legal counsel that we can release that? Because normally, whenever we get opinions, it says, this is confidential and this is not to be shared and blah, blah, blah.
I think we could certainly ask that question, but this is just an opinion on a petition warrant article. Is it written correctly or not? And I think that's, to me, that can be public information. But again, I think it would be appropriate to call legal counsel just to make sure that it is appropriate.
Okay.
If we vote to release it and our legal counsel says, no, you really shouldn't, then obviously that negates our vote to approve it or not. Yeah, pending legal opinion.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least,
I'll amend my motion to the such, and would you re-second that?
I will re-second.
Thank you, Tom.
so maybe we should vote on that before we go.
Let's get one thing off the table. So all those in favor of releasing the legal opinion on the petition warrant article pending approval from legal counsel, signaled by vote. Tom?
Aye.
Brody?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Dr. Jim?
Yep.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene?
Aye.
And Chair votes aye as well. Okay, so that's done. Charlene?
So one question I have, and it's sort of a follow-up to Brody's comments. One of the things I struggle with is the fact that we are asking all 6 towns in our school district to pay for a building that is not a school district building. It's a municipal piece of property, and I understand the fact, I certainly support, you know, youth sports, whether it's a Back Bay or Kingswood or, you know, whatever iteration. But I know that, I guess I want to know, since we're asking these other towns specifically, we already know that Wolfeboro and Tuftonboro have access, and we know that our limited number of students in our hockey programs will have access, and that obviously will include youth from other towns in the district. However, I'm wondering what sort of accommodations that the town of Wolfeboro is going to make for participation in a more, in a broader way by the citizens in Brookfield, Effingham, New Durham, and Ossipee. Because, you know, we're asking the taxpayers in those towns to pay for a portion of Pop Whalen when they're not necessarily going to be able to reap the benefits of that, except, you know, for the limited number of students that participate in the sports programs. I think Tuftonboro pays maybe, was it $16,000 a year to the town of Wolfeboro for access to Pop Whalen? Is there going to be some sort of a similar prorated buy-in for the other towns in the district other than Wolfeboro and Tuftonboro?
All our recreation programs are set up so the town of Wolfeboro pays a certain fee. There are Brookfield and Tuftonboro give us a certain amount per year, and they pay what we call the residence rates. We have non-resident rates, and everybody can come in under that non-resident rate, whether you're from Effingham, you can come up from Rochester and use a non-resident rate. In terms of giving money to another entity, I had that problem when we were asked, the town to put $50,000 on for the community playground behind Carpenter School, and had that same thing. How can I, you know, give this? And what we're really doing is we were giving a donation, or you're giving it to donate to the project for the life of that facility. So we're doing it in Wolfeboro in terms of a playground that's on your property, as you're going to do it to our Pop-O. The only facility that I know in Wolfeboro that is resident only, and there's some people that are upset about this one, is our parking lots to two of our beaches are residents only. And then a third beach is open. Other than that, we always have non-resident rates and everybody's welcome.
So in this specific case, the town of Wolfeboro would be willing to extend resident rates to Effingham, New Durham, and Ossipee?
No, that's not you.
No?
No, I'm not saying that at all. The reason they get a resident rate is because they pay us the money that it costs us to administer the program. That's the difference. When we do a non-resident rate, it's the amount of money that it costs us for our secretary, our park and rec director, etc. So that's the difference. What you're paying for is to have an exclusive right to that locker room, to use it just for you. Nobody else is going in that or doing anything in that locker room. That's what you're paying for.
Yeah, Charlene, I think the amount of money that Tuftonboro pays for to the Parks and Rec for town of Wolfeboro, that's been ongoing for as long as I've lived in town, I think 30, 40 years, whatever. And Wolfeboro and Tuftonboro have been, you know, connected at the hip since, you know, Brewster Academy for the most part. Brewster Free, Tuftonboro, Wolfeboro Academy. You know, that's just the way it was.
Brookfield does it also. They pay us a sum.
So we pay, you know, we pay that sum each year, and our residents get a chance to use the ice time and all at the Wolfeboro resident rate, as opposed to the non-resident rate. If any one of the other towns, I'm sure, approached the town of Wolfeboro, and Ossipee approached and said, you know, we'll pay you $20,000 a year if our residents can come to Wolfeboro and get a reduced rate to skate or whatever. You know, I'm sure the Wolfeboro would you know, entertain that. Effingham, same way. The likelihood of that is pretty slim probably just because of distance. But Wolfeboro and Tuftonboro being, you know, as close together as they are, that's always been part of the process. Victor, then we can wrap this up, I think, pretty quickly.
That fee for the 16,000, and I think Brookfield pays a quarter of that. That's for more than Pop Whalen. That's for all parks and rec. It's the ski mountain, we include ski passes and other programs that parks and rec operate. So if there's there's D-ball that are allowed to come in, these other towns are allowed to participate. So in effect, because Tuftonboro doesn't have a robust Parks and Rec department, they can send their kids here at whatever, Wolfeboro, so it's the same. There's no town line at that point, essentially.
All right, one question from Stephanie, and then I think we have to wrap this up.
I have one clarifying question, then I'd like to make the motion. You said, so the language in the warrant article is for the exclusive year-round use. The tentative language in the agreement is for exclusive use. But you referenced that these locker rooms will not be built, and that was something Jack had said. So will there be locker rooms for our hockey players?
Good question.
So, as it sits today, there's no MOU, right? We're all in agreement, there's no check for $250,000 or $300,000, right? So, Pop Whalen has 4 existing locker rooms, so we can occupy the teams that are on the ice and the teams that are coming in for the next game. So we have 4 locker rooms, and we can facilitate a flow of operation as it sits today. So if Kingswood books ice there and they have games and practices and such, business will be as usual. What Kingswood and Brewster had for the last 20 plus years, as Jack had referred to, was they were dedicated locker rooms, so they kept their equipment there, they operated out of there. Kingswood and Brewster each had 1, and now they both have boys and girls. Now there'd be 2 locker rooms, a boy and a girl locker room for Brewster and for Governor Wentworth. And so once the agreement's done, those rooms will be finished, and you guys would have that continual operation. And as Linda stated, you're essentially buying that spit up of that space, so no one else is using it. It's for you, it becomes essentially your lease or pen area.
Right. If this doesn't happen, our hockey teams continue to use one of the locker rooms that are available. They just can't leave their equipment there like they could if these are dedicated locker rooms where we're the only ones using those locker rooms, and our equipment can stay there and all of that. So the fact is, if this doesn't pass through the taxpayers and it's not funded, the locker rooms may not be finished, but there are locker rooms available for the teams to use during practice and ice time.
I wanted to check on that.
Yep.
That's important. And I just want to make sure I'm clarifying. So Friends of Pop Whalen committed to fundraising $2.6 million, which is amazing. $2.7 million. And so part of this is to help with that fundraising effort. Am I getting that right?
You got it.
So this is a fundraising effort, essentially, that we're asking the taxpayers for?
We looked at it, had we literally known 2 years ago that the school district was going to go, maybe 6 towns don't really want this, we probably wouldn't have built that square footage.
I see.
And we wouldn't have spent the $250,000. So
I see.
by now we're already,
That's the water
Jack
over the
said
bridge you
we're
were
kind of
talking
like,
about. Okay.
We've got 1 foot in the bucket, and
Okay.
we haven't spent the last amount of money to finish them.
Yeah.
But we could have literally said, let Kingswood go do what they want later. I don't care. It's not my problem. And we could have taken that approach, and we didn't. And to do it later would cost a heck of a lot more than $250,000 if you decided later we wanted to add that space.
Sure.
One other thing I'd like to clarify before we get to a vote. If, based on the way the warrant article is written, if we vote to support the warrant article, are we voting to support something that is not a valid warrant article, based on the current legal opinion? And that's one of the issues, because again, if the way it's written, if it is a warrant article that is considered a financing process and would require the hearings and all that for bonding, we're already past that time frame, so we can't really support this based on the fact that it's an invalid petition warrant article, even if it's adjusted at the deliberative session. If we're supporting something that we can't support, I'm a little confused on this.
We did on some of our petition warrant articles, we just abstained. We took a vote and abstained. Some of them may be changed at the deliberative session, and I think you could have a meeting after the deliberative session and take a vote. So if we're abstaining on one, hoping they're going to make a change. If they make that change, we'll meet afterwards and we will re-vote. So there's another option for you.
Thank you. Brody?
I think you brought up a point, Vic, that first thing I'm thinking of is when the SRO warrant article was discussed in front of the Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen with Suzanne Ryan, the chief will remember. She was talking about the double taxation of taxpayers in Wolfeboro too, and I think Wolfeboro taxpayers just approved the bonded project, and they'll have to pay $100,000 of this $300,000, and so I think Wolfeboro taxpayers should be aware of that too. I'm just stating that just in case anyone watches this meeting, just so they're aware, and I can understand the justifications for wanting to support this 100%. I again wholeheartedly supported the original Whalen project and everything, but that's just something to bring up. I also want to kind of address what Linda Murray just said, and the community playgrounds that we have at our elementary schools are a little bit different than this, because each town in the school district is treated equally and what the expectation is for fundraising for their playground. Wolfeboro likes to have a big, beautiful playground, which is amazing, and the entire community can use, and we leave it open to the community. We don't lock the gate and tell everyone they can't go on school grounds after school hours. They're allowed to go there, but the current proposed new playground that they want to put forward is $300,000, and that's a very expensive playground, and the town is chipping in $50,000, but it's also towards a fundraising effort.
Yeah, but I was responding to Charlene and saying I understood why she was having a hard time, because I had that same feeling and that same thing coming up when we were going to donate $50,000. It was a conversation to say I understand why she was doing.
And I understand.
Not to anything more than
Okay,
that.
no, I understand, and I would also understand if the town of Wolfeboro didn't want to contribute towards it because they felt it was school district property and it's a school district's responsibility, or for the school district to work with the local PTOs and the teachers to do the fundraising on its own. So, there's many ways to kind of fillet a fish. My mother uses a much stronger term, but there's many ways to fillet a fish.
Okay,
yes,
let's move on if we can. I'd entertain a motion of any kind to either support, not support, or leave the warrant article as it is. So who would like to make a motion? Dr. Jim?
I'd like to make a motion to leave the warrant article as it stands.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. Go ahead, Brody.
I'm just going to... Yeah, because we're making...
Moved and seconded.
Are we legally allowed to just not recommend a money petition warrant? I thought because it's money, I thought we had to make some kind of recommendation.
Because it's a petition warrant article, we do not have to recommend or not recommend or take a stand at all.
Oh, that's a good motion. I will second that.
Any other discussion? Well, yeah, it's certainly a little confusing. If we don't say anything, if we leave it the way it's written on the original warrant, and let me read it to you, okay? It says, to see if the Governor Wentworth Regional School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 for the purpose of acquiring a 40-year agreement with the town of Wolfeboro for exclusive year-round use of 2 locker rooms and 1 room with showers and bathroom facilities at the renovated Pop Whalen Ice Art Center. The sum would be appropriated to be paid $150,000 in 2023, $150,000 in 2024. Submitted by petition, this special warrant article requires a majority vote. That's all it says. Now, obviously, if it's, even if the voters pass this, I'm not sure, because it's a funding mechanism. I don't know if the voters pass it, whether we're bound to pay the money or not.
It's not legal, sorry.
It's not legally written, correct?
Right.
We wouldn't have, we've already missed protocol, which is requirement for
Right.
bonding.
Now, if it's amended at the deliberative session and becomes a valid one payment for $300,000, it's not a budgeted item. But again, if the voters vote on that, are we required to fund that or not as a petition warrant article?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
If the petition warrant article is amended at the deliberative session for one payment of $300,000, and it passes by the voters, because it's a petition warrant article, are we required to fund that petition warrant article?
Yeah, as long as legal counsel at the deliberative session says that that is written correctly now.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I have significant concerns about the way it's written. And as a member of the outlying communities, that, you know, they will see no benefit from this at all. And I appreciate the incredible effort it takes to do what you've done to raise so much money, but I don't think we're a fundraising body, and I think I can't support this. I cannot.
Okay,
Not the way it's written, and
okay,
not in general.
That's fine. So right now, the motion on the floor is to leave the petition article as it is with no recommendation for or against. That's what the motion on the floor is right now. So we can vote on that.
So my comment is I can't get behind a not is. I think
Right.
I need to.
Okay, and that's fine. So
Correct.
Any other specific discussion on this?
I have a question.
Did you want to say something? I think beyond the merits, a lot of conversation about how wonderful this is, or so on and so forth, and who's going to benefit. Setting that aside, I just think this is so flawed in terms of all of this. You know, the MOU from the get-go we had problems with. We don't have a signed MOU. And this is problematic in terms of how it's written. I think as a board, I think the only responsible thing for us to do is back away from it, as this motion would basically achieve.
You just turned it off.
Righty. So just for clarification, the motion is essentially to vote, not to vote.
Right. The motion is to leave the article written as it is. That is submitted by petition. This requires a majority vote.
Okay, so
With no recommendation for or against by the board. No board vote to support or not support this amendment.
So again, just to make sure I have it clear in my head, the motion that Dr. Jim made and that was seconded, we're voting to basically not take a vote on whether or not to recommend the article.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Right. Brody.
I have one question regarding, we talked about, so if the voters vote, because they ultimately will vote to raise the funds, we're required to expend the money?
Not if it's voted in the form it's voted on. Because
even if it's an illegal warrant, we're
If it's a
required?
legal warrant, it states exactly what it's for. It's not in the operating budget. The operating budget is a different story. It's a bottom line number. that
I
the
know we have
board
to
has
raise the
approved.
money for that purpose, but are we required to expend it for that purpose?
Yes, whether we recommended it or not, if it's a legal petition warrant article and the voters vote to approve the money, we're required to authorize that money to be spent.
Okay. And then my other question was, if they amended at the deliberative, or the public body, not they, because there's no one who knows who's going to do it. Maybe the Friends of Pop Whalen. But do we need to vote again at the deliberative to make another recommendation, whether it's a recommendation like this or one or the other?
If you choose to.
Yeah,
it's up to our discretion.
Right, if it's amended at the deliberative session and we decide to have a discussion and a vote to recommend or not recommend the revised petition, we can make that, and then it goes out on the official ballot, recommended by the school board, not recommended by the school board, or again, like it's written now, submitted by petition. This warrant requires a majority vote.
And so, one last clear, and then I'm done, because we need to vote so we can move on with the rest of the meeting. So our current motion is to not make any recommendation and to just leave no recommendation on the ballot. We're legitimately allowed to do that?
Yes.
RSA
Yes.
permits us to do that, DRA
Yes.
will be okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes. Okay, so the motion on the floor right now is, let's see if we can get this vote taken. The motion on the floor right now is to leave Article 8 for the petition warrant article by the Friends of Pop Whalen alone, the way it appears on our preliminary approved warrant articles, which simply states, submitted by petition, this special warrant article requires a majority vote. There will be no recommendation for or against by the board if we take this vote. Correct? Oh. Yes, yes. The vote would be yes to not change the current writing, the current way the article is written. Now, again, that's, again, you're not supporting, you're not supporting. And it's going to be up to the Friends of Pop Whalen at the deliberative session to make this a legal warrant. If it's not changed and the attorneys at the deliberative session say, I'm sorry, that's not a legal warrant, it doesn't matter what the voters vote on then, because we're not required to support it if it's an illegal warrant article. And right now, this is an illegal warrant article, so if it's not changed appropriately at the deliberative session, it's just a moot point whether we support it or don't support it.
But if it is changed, we can change our recommendation.
We can have a discussion at the deliberative session and vote to approve or not approve the amended petition warrant article.
As part of the procedure, you would post a meeting after the deliberative session so that if any of the warrant articles are changed, even the operating budget, if it goes up or down, any of the warrant articles with monetary value are changed. It gives the board the opportunity, legally posting the meeting afterwards, and then taking a vote. And that's what would go on the ballot.
And that would happen at the deliberative session.
Right, you would post
Right.
the meeting, and then after the deliberative session is over, you would resume your meeting to choose to discuss what you do or don't, but to make any changes to your recommendations on any amended warrant articles.
Will that be reflected on the ballots?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so that will be reflected on the
If you take a
ballots.
vote, right, if you choose to vote, retake the tally.
At deliberative.
After deliberative.
After deliberative.
In your own district meeting.
Right, we have a district meeting right after the deliberative session if we want to discuss a modified warrant article.
The draft of this is the draft that will go out to the voters ahead of the deliberative session, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
This is only set for deliberative. If there are no changes at deliberative, then that's what the ballot turns into. If there are changes at deliberative and they pass by the governing body, then we change the warrant to whatever the dollar amount and whatever, if the board takes new tallies on those, that's what the ballot is then changed to.
Right.
And goes to the voters in March.
So our mailing would include the writing just the way you see it here. until the deliberative session. And then after the deliberative session, if something changes, then that would be the change.
So knowing that, I think it would be irresponsible, given the knowledge that we have from our legal opinion, to not recommend it, because it's not.
You're voting to leave it be and leave it as is right now.
And then it's up to the people at the deliberative session to change it to make it legal. If they don't change it and it's not legal, then it doesn't matter what we vote on, because whatever the voters vote is null and void. If it's a non-legal petition warrant article.
If you vote against it, it's going to appear that you're voting against the whole content of the petition warrant article, and that may or may not be the case.
But once it's a legal warrant article at the deliberative session, if it gets to that point, then we have the option to vote to support or not support, which will go on the ballot in March. All right, we're going to take a vote, I think. So, all those in favor of supporting the motion on the floor to leave Article 8 as is, as presented on the warrant articles as discussed, leaving it alone, signal by saying aye. So we have Tom? Aye. Brody?
Skeptically aye.
Okay. Stephanie?
No.
No. Dr. Jim?
Aye.
Charlene?
Aye.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
And chair votes aye. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6 yeses and 1 no to leave the article the way it is, and it'll be up to the petitioners to talk to it at the deliberative session. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I request a 5-minute recess?
You certainly can, and anyone else that would like a 5-minute recess, go for it. Okay, hopefully this discussion will be a whole lot quicker than the last discussion. We're here to discuss the added agenda item of Article number 9, which is a warrant article reaffirming our First Amendment rights, which was issued by petition. And I'd open it up for the floor for discussion. That's the other petition warrant article, correct. That's the last one on the page. We're going right to that now, because this is going to be fairly quick, and then we'll get to the SRO. Yes. Okay, there's been a motion to support the petition warrant article by Brody, and seconded by Charlene, and we'll have discussion.
I can speak to it real quick.
Sure.
I think based on how I'm reading it, where is it exactly again? There we go. I was like, where's the really long one? All I see this is while, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, but this isn't binding because it's non-moneyed. So it's not binding, but I think in many ways it's symbolic. It just says that we're going to respect people's constitutional rights to freedom of information. There's obviously federal and state laws that we're still going to have to follow as a board, but it's just good for the voters to get an idea that, you know, we support people's constitutional rights to freedom of access of information within state and constitutional parameters, whether it's case law, federal law, etc. But that the voters, we also want to get an idea that, you know, and I would assume probably very strongly agree that we should have, you know, there's nothing more American than being able to read a controversial book or article that's in the newspaper, and then to be able to discuss it amongst each other and to debate it and to come to consensus on how our society should be run. So I think it's a very good and worthy thing that we tell our state officials and our county officials that, you know, our school districts should be a place of reasonable, open information.
Okay, thank you. And I think there's a couple of important words within here. In the middle section, it does say to see if the voters will direct the Governor Wentworth Regional School Board to urge the New Hampshire General Court. This is just, again, this doesn't bind the court to do anything. It's to see if the voters want us to urge them to take a particular stand. And again, the General Court can decide what the General Court decides, whether the voters support this or don't support it. So that's where we are in this. Additional comments? Stephanie, anything? Yes or no? No, you don't have it. No, you don't have to. You don't have to respond.
I would make a motion to kill this motion and do the same thing we did for the last one.
Okay. Well, we can't. We have to take a. We have to vote on this motion before we.
Point of order?
Yes.
How would you propose to do that?
Well, it doesn't matter. Right now, you could suggest that we table it, but the motion has already been made and seconded to support, to put our support on this warrant article.
I could be mistaken. I don't know how closely we follow Robert's rules, but doesn't a motion to table take precedence over other motions?
It probably does.
So you could motion to
you
table.
You could make a motion to table.
Please don't.
No, I'm suggesting that we make the motion to leave it as is.
Okay, well, we already have a prior motion on the floor that has to be voted on first.
But the answer to that motion was
If we vote to support it or not support it, you could make a motion to reconsider. And if you get a second on that, then you'd have a discussion to reconsider the prior vote and move forward from there. If there's no second. So in other words, if we vote on Brody's right now to support, say to support this warrant article, it would go that way with board support, whatever the vote is. If you're not happy with that and you wanted to reconsider, you could make a motion to reconsider the prior vote. And if there's a second, then we discuss that.
Right, if this vote passes.
If the vote passes, yes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're putting Jim Pittman to sleep right now. I'm sorry, Jim, I know. You can table, but you need a second. You can motion to reconsider if you voted for it, and you need a second. If you vote against it, you can't motion to reconsider. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
And I think, and I just want to speak to why I made the motion, I view this as much different than the Pop Whalen article, because the Pop Whalen one it's asking very specific about raising funds, right? And, I think there's been a lot of pinballing back and forth with the Friends of Pop, and there was a lot of miscommunication, and I just want them to be able to bring us a legal final product before we weigh in and make our final decision at the deliberative that would be put on the ballot. This, we understand it's not entirely legally. We're not required to contact these officials, so I think if the voters show very overwhelming support, it's something we should consider at a future meeting, taking action on. And we wouldn't actually be legally prohibited from not using funds in this way, though I would discourage it. I don't think it's very American. I don't think it represents our community properly, but this is just a very symbolic gesture, and to get a good temperature of how the taxpayers and the residents feel throughout this district about reasonable access to information that's deemed appropriate according to state, federal, and case law. So I just view it as a little bit different. We're the $300,000 petition warrant article is something that's a little bit more complicated, and it's a little bit more, I just view it differently. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we hear any other discussion on this particular motion?
Did you want to explain anything more?
Why you're opposed to it?
Well,
I'm not, it's not that I'm opposed to it, I feel that we chose to take a neutral stance on the first petition warrant article, and I feel it's appropriate for us to take a neutral stance on this petition warrant article.
okay, and that's fine.
And so if it means that, this is a very odd process at the moment.
Sorry, the thing is, we don't ordinarily have too many petition warrant articles come up, but it's not inappropriate to support one and not support another, depending on your individual preference on a particular warrant article. So if somebody puts a petition warrant article in that is something that maybe we should have thought of and we didn't, and we want to support that, that's perfectly fine. If somebody puts a petition warrant article in that we don't really support, or if we specifically didn't put it in for a particular reason, then we can vote not to support or not do anything with it. So right now, the motion on the floor is to support, to vote to support this warrant article. That's the motion on the floor, which we should vote on. And then if you want to, again, if you want to ask to rescind that vote, or if you want to vote to table and you get a second, then we can certainly vote on that.
I'll just add that we have a policy about, that we don't condone censorship of the library. So that's, students at the moment under our policies have access to all the books that we have in our libraries, and the books aren't pulled or censored. So that is an extant policy.
And that's a great policy, and I appreciate that the school district holds that policy. There's just a lot of public bodies that have jurisdiction over this public body in our schools, like the state and the federal government. That and there's a lot of legislation being proposed to amend RSA that I think it's worthy of the school board, like other boards, to possibly get an idea what our voters think, and then decide whether or not we want to weigh in and ask the state to preserve local control and allow us to uphold our policy. I just view petition warrants aren't all created equally, and I view this one as being, we're not talking about taxation across 6 towns to fund a specific town's project and a whole bunch of legal questions. We're just kind of trying to get an idea of how the taxpayers and the residents feel, and then deciding after we see maybe overwhelming support or maybe more lukewarm support, do we want to follow through with what this petition warrant says? And so I would recommend to the taxpayers, in my personal opinion, this is a worthy cause, and we should see what they think.
Okay, thank you, Brody. Caroline, hang on a second.
No, why don't you just give Caroline?
Oh, sorry, I withdraw my call to question.
Oh, thank you. One note that I'd like to make the board aware of, we currently have a right to know request asking, everybody with me? Quiet coyote? It's late. Right to know request. The right to know request is asking if our students have access to 118 particular books. So we're currently researching and asking our librarians to let us know if our students have access to 118 specific books that one individual takes offense to our students having access to. So this is real in our communities.
Thank you. Okay, any more comments? Otherwise, we're going to move on to a vote. Okay, all those in favor of the motion on the floor? Yes, Stephanie.
Because of my conflict of interest in this, I have to recuse myself.
Okay, you can do that. When I get to the vote, you can certainly do that. You just abstain. Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a vote on the supporting Article number 9, which is a petition warrant article reaffirming our First Amendment rights. And the vote of the board will be indicated on the petition warrant article when it's reprinted. All those in favor of supporting the motion? Tom?
Aye.
Brody?
Aye.
Stephanie? Abstain, okay, that's okay. Dr. Jim?
I'll abstain.
Abstain. Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene?
Yes.
And chair votes yes, so we've got 5, 4, and 2 abstentions. So the article will be written so that it's supported by the board. We don't indicate the vote count or anything, it's just supported by the board. Okay, thank you. Okay, we are moving along. Kingswood Complex SRO warrant article. Whew. We're there. Okay. Yeah, as you know, at the last meeting, we voted to support putting a warrant article supported by the majority of the board on our warrant articles to support the SRO position, second SRO position for the Kingswood Complex. And we did pay, Brody.
You have to
Thank you.
separate that.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So it was supported by the majority of the board. The SRO position is for 1 year, which we recommended to see how it goes. And it's a Kingswood complex position. It's not a specific middle school position, which initially came up. So if there's any board members that would like to speak to it, the Wolfeboro Police Department provided a complete list of offenses for the past 5 years, and I thank you for doing that in such a timely manner. I think everybody realizes that this information probably should have been provided earlier to the school district. However, in my opinion, shame on the school district for not reaching out to see how the SRO positions were really going. In all my years on the board with the SRO, how are things going? They're great. How's the SRO working in the district? That's great. The kids like him, her, whoever is in the position at the time, and everything's terrific. We did not reach out for detailed information. When we did, the information came us in a very timely manner. I do think there's some questions on some of the offenses listed and all that, but it may not be appropriate to discuss individual areas of that, and I think that's maybe for a different time. But unless somebody on the board would like to make some comments initially, we'll ask some of the people in the audience, but Charlene.
Well, I just wanted to say that I voted to support it at our last meeting, and I still support it.
Thank you. Brody?
I supported last meeting with the trust that we'd get the data, and we did, and I really appreciate that. That was very appreciative. I know some people have questions about the school data and the data from the Wolfeboro Police Department. I think those are worthy questions that can be clarified. They've been clarified to me personally, or me watching also budget stuff. My bigger thing has been some of the procedure, and I was just kind of, because I remember we went through the Finance Subcommittee meeting discussing new positions, and it was never brought up. And we went through 3 days in mid-November while they were formulating this warrant article. Actually, one of the days we met for our Finance Subcommittee meetings, they had formulated the warrant article from the police commissioners and had originally voted to send it to the Board of Selectmen the same day. And, you know, something obviously changed in the time that, you know, there was increased communication between administration and the chairs of the police commission and the board here and the chief of police. And I'm just kind of wondering, when did we realize as a school district that we needed this, and what was the vital information that was kind of relayed that made us realize that? Because I guess that's one of the big things is it came, you know, kind of out of nowhere, and there was obviously a realization from the law enforcement professionals that we needed it, but where did we kind of, you know, maybe somehow miss the forest through the trees, if you will?
Well, I think, in my opinion, again, I'd say we haven't been asking these questions for forever. I think if we were more proactive in looking at the positions for SRO and what the results are on a yearly basis, if we were more proactive, not just relying on the police department to provide us that information, I think we're somewhat at fault as well as a board. So I think, hang on just a second. So I just think that when we asked for the information, we got it in a very timely manner. My feeling is at our last board meeting when all of the police personnel were there discussing this, to me it was kind of an eye-opener that we not only missed a lot of stuff that was going on, we didn't even ask for it. We didn't ask for any of the information. So I think shame on us and maybe shame on them for not coming forward sooner. But I think, anyway, don't worry, we've got some hands up, so yeah.
Just to speak to Brody's point, on behalf of the commission, I want to apologize, if you will. We live in the data. We have a monthly meeting where the chief, the captain, report activity, not only from the school resource officer, from our investigator all the way down the line, our patrol staff. So we live in the data, we know the data. We've been tracking on this for a long time. And, you know, I think it was mutually agreed upon by the three commissioners that we're very passionate about school safety, about a very vulnerable population up here. And we wanted to protect that population. So we kind of, I think the first person we blindsided was Caroline, because we invited her to a school safety forum meeting that we had, and that's where we first brought this up. We did put the cart before the horse, and I apologize for that. Again, because we were living in the data, we knew what was going on. We decided to move forward. It's like, now we've got to go because the numbers are really starting to ramp up. Things are getting out of control. And we're looking at it just from our numbers, right? And then we had people say, well, we want to see data. So we gave more finite data, but we also looked at the data from was inputted rather by the school district to the New Hampshire Board of Education. That became very telling too. And not only was it telling, but it supported our argument. So that's how we got to it. We're kind of like the same thing with Pop Whalen. You know, only the commission took a proactive stance to move forward. We have statutory authority within the town of Wolfeboro to determine what resources we need and to hire those resources. But obviously, we're not going to push that forward without getting mutual agreement, in this case from the school board and from the school district voters. If we were going to hire new officers specifically for Wolfeboro, we'd expect to go through a process and get everybody on board within the town. So I apologize for all of the unknown, but we've been tracking on this data for the past few years, so we've known that we were going to be needing a second SRO up here, and that's how we got to where we're at. So I just want to apologize. We still stand behind everything. We're very, very impassioned about this. We want to push this forward. We want the school district to support it as well. We have the support of our Board of Selectmen as well as our Budget Committee. So we're grateful for that, and we have your support, and now we hope that the boards of the district will support it as well.
Thank you, Steve.
Speak the numbers.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we know that you have monthly reports and all that, and again, the promise has been made to share the information to the board. Again, I think the extremely timely information that was provided right after our last meeting meant a lot to me that, you know, you kept your word to get us some information. We expect that information on a monthly basis, or however often you get it. So we can evaluate what's happening as well. So I think that's an important thing. Yeah, I'm gonna let Guy, please.
Obviously, I was at the last board meeting and listened a lot to what was being discussed, and I've been fortunate to work with every school resource officer this district has ever had. And we spent a lot of time talking about cases and reports and infractions. Yes, the numbers are up in our schools, they're up in our communities, they're up across the state. It's in our communities, it's in our state, it's in our school. But one thing I can't underestimate is the value of having school resource officers in your building. The conversations in the hallways with other students, establishing relationships so they feel comfortable talking to Officer Devine, Officer Boucher, to have them in your classes teaching safety rules on the road, drunk driving, the different problems that students may have in health classes. Now, Corporal Boucher is going throughout our district to do training with our staff on school safety. Officer Devine has done that successfully when she started here, sitting in the grass and having lunch with girls at lunchtime, having conversations. That's what a school resource officer is. It's not about busting kids and giving them a ticket or a citation to go to court. That's part of it. But the relationships that she's established and Corporal Boucher is establishing as he's new in our district is what's important. Those are the things that are needed in our building as a support to us as administrators trying to provide a safe learning environment. We can look at data, and data is important, and I understand that. We look at data all the time in schools. But I can't stress enough the importance of having that part of the SRO being visible in your school, not being swamped with the desk this high of paperwork that she can't keep up with because of the increase by herself. This is the biggest community in our county during the day, with students and staff on this campus. There are more people here than any other spot in the county in our day. And to have 2 officers, I don't think is unreasonable to ask on our campus. We've had situations where we've needed them immediately, and they're there, and their response time is amazing. We had similar conversations over 20 years ago when we started our first SRO. And do we need them? Is there a need for them? Could we allocate resources somewhere else? Yes, we always could allocate resources somewhere else. But the relationship that our officers are building with students every day, because they would have time to do that, is invaluable. That's what keeps us safe. And I listened a lot last school board meeting, and that's my passion, is being able to work with our team of administrators and work with these officers to keep all our kids safe and our staff. And now they're able to do some training. And those are the things that a school resource officer should be doing, as well as holding kids accountable, which they do. So that's my opinion on it, and I support this wholeheartedly for the well-being of our students and our staff in our district on this campus.
Thank you, Guy. Carrie, can I have some input from you?
Well, I think I can echo everything that Guy said in regards to the relationships that we have built with our local PD, and especially our resource officers. As you know, we've had 2 incidents at the middle school where their response time has been absolutely amazing and very supportive, 100%. We work hand in hand with our school resource officers to support the kids within this community. And I think exactly what Mr. Donnelly has said, the fact that both officers are available, even at our local elementary schools, to just meet the kids and develop those long-term relationships that last not only through the middle school but on to the high school, it's important. And it helps develop our whole school community. I, as a parent in this district as well, I think that it's absolutely essential to have that strong community feel and make sure, our kids are safe. It's not an aspect of that, we have all this crime going on here. I mean, I choose to send my own kids here because I know it is a safe community, but I also do feel like there's a lot of aspects of the SRO and that would be helpful to have a second set of hands. So I do support that wholeheartedly as well.
Thank you. Lara, how about you?
Well,
Certainly your relationship in your department, your relationship.
It's, again, articulated everything I would say, and I would echo as a parent in this district of the class of 2020 and 2024, I send my kids here because I believe in this district. If I didn't, they wouldn't be here. And I want to come to work every day. So again, I can't impress that upon the board enough. These positions, again, Guy and I have been fortunate to work since the beginning of time with the SROs from the very first day. They're invaluable in ways that we never could have imagined with that first SRO, I think. Really couldn't imagine. But what I see for students is a sense of safety, security, relation, connection. And also from a counseling lens, it's somebody they can ask a legal question to that none of us really understand that from an education standpoint. And they have somebody to go to and have that rapport with and knock on the door and say, I have a question. Can you help me with? Or they've got a bigger issue and they're going right to the source who can actually do something for them in that moment versus someone who has to then go retell the story and start a process. So they're invaluable, and they create an incredibly safe community and a responsive community, and the connection. What we need in this world right now is more connection and more relationships, and I think this is a huge part of building that bridge for what we all want for our communities. So it's invaluable. It's too bad we need more, but that's just the reality of our day. It's a reality.
Thank you, Lara. Grady, how about you?
I think it's been said, I don't want to repeat everything, but they build community trust. They build trust with our students and engagement, and that's the most important thing and most helpful to our students today.
Thank you. And I do understand the timing issues of how this whole thing played out. I think we took the position at our last meeting, obviously, to support a warrant article for this. I'm still very much in favor of it. If the chief or the captain would like to add some information to this, again, I think a lot of it's been said. Yeah.
So I just want to bring what the principals have just talked about full circle. We had a kid that we brought to court
just recently for some pretty serious charges. I met him, I met his dad, I met his granddad, I learned a lot more about their family. We had it after the trial, after everything was said and done, we met afterwards, and I had talked to him about being responsible. You know, he's growing up now, he has to be taking more responsibility and stuff like that. Don't be afraid to come see me in the event that you're having a bad day or you're going to make a bad choice and stuff like that. Well, lo and behold, who showed up in the office the other day because he was about ready to get into a fight, but decided to come see us first. So we had the ability to stop an event before the event even started just by making those relationships. It's absolutely huge.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Captain.
I mean, so they said it perfect. I'm not going to go really on with that. The relationships is the key. If their caseload keeps going up, the relationships go down. I mean, it's very easy. So another one in there helps with the caseloads, helps with the relationships. Hey, I have 3 kids in the district. I'm a parent here. My kids go here. So we're planning for the future. You can see the data that's there. The cases are going up. Unfortunately, the cases are going up in the town of Wolfeboro. So they're going up everywhere. It's just, it's the beast. It's where we are. People like it here. They want to be here. So what they're doing is remarkable every day.
Thank you. Chief?
Thank you. So the captain, just so we're all understanding how the PD kind of works, captain is really the guy day to day that's got his finger, his pulse, if you will, on the daily operations. And then, you know, I'm doing the strategic big deep dive into what's the next threat coming down, where do we need to position ourselves, what our policies look like, what are our politicians doing, how do we enact the things that the governor and the criminal justice reform committees want us to do, and how do we go about doing that. So a lot of, almost like a lot of what Dr. Hill, if you will, try to put it in some sort of perspective to the school board. A lot of what Dr. Hill and the superintendent, the vice superintendent are doing is essentially what I'm doing. Every once in a while, the captain and I will put our heads together and we'll figure out something operationally, and then I'll go back and do the deep dive into the data. So what the commissioner, the chairman said is correct. You know, we look and we live in the data, and we're tracking trends, we're doing trend analysis, we're doing balancing analysis, and I'm looking at the threat coming down the pipe, right? What's the next threat? Now, if you look at when we're in the midst of the opioid crisis, you know, the captain was dealing with that, I was dealing with it, but I was doing the deep dive and saying, okay, what's the next threat coming down? We think it's going to be crystal methamphetamine. Okay, what does that mean? What do we have to do to get things and resources on board to deal with that? What grants do we need to write? What relationships do we need to build? Things like that. If we take a look at what's going on in the United States, across the country, and then take a look at what's going on here in the state of New Hampshire, just start with the southern tier of the state, you have to be living under a rock not to be able to connect the dots. You have to be living under a rock. Right? What we're trying to do is set ourselves up for success here, all right? And that's the whole purpose behind this. Providing a safe and secure environment is ultimately my responsibility. Everything that happens or fails to happen relative to public safety in this town, law enforcement, is my responsibility. This is really needed. We've been tracking on the data for a few years now. Now, my apologies to you, sir, and to this honorable board if we didn't communicate that more effectively. I'm glad that the commission pushed this forward. I will agree, Brody, that it probably blindsided you. You have my apologies for that. I probably should have been a little bit brighter to try to make those connections early on. That won't happen again. That won't happen again. You'll have the data. You'll be able to take a look at the trend and do the trend analysis, just like I do. And then with the data, there's been a lot of confusion about the data. And specifically, there's been some public officials that have misquoted, misanalyzed the data coming out of the school district and have conflated that with criminal data or data coming from the NCIC system, which is the state federal system that I report crime data to. These two are mutually exclusive. I have nothing to do with school data. That's all SAU 49, right? your policies, your procedures, they get reported based off incidents that trickle across your mandatory reporting. That's nothing to do with my simple assault
That data
criminal mischief.
is reported to the Department of
Right, and there was and there was some confusion because I think there was a public official said, well, look at the data, there's nothing going on at the middle school. Well, first of all, he was looking at the wrong school. Right, but that's a discussion for another day. Wasn't even the right school. In fact, wasn't even in the district. It was looking at a completely different school. And then when he found something that he liked, it was under the bullying panel of the school safety guy. So it wasn't even really germane to what he was trying to describe. And that is another whole other discussion. But the 194, I believe it's 194 offenses, Captain, is that correct? 194 offenses in your packet, 169 cases, split between 2 officers. That sound about right? You two?
165.
What is it?
189.
189? Okay, offenses? 189 offenses and 169 split between you two, 125 and 69, I think?
Yes, for the school.
Yeah, for the school, yeah. So those numbers are good. Those are good. If you have any specific questions about offenses, be happy to address any questions or concerns.
We do.
Are these confirmed cases? So the 88 to
I can't hear you. I'm sorry about that. It's not yours, man.
So to laser focus it on your question to us, I do have a question. So are the 198 that we're looking at in 2022, is every single one of those 198 confirmed cases? Are those open for investigation? Because I'm wondering what is the status of those?
The two are the same. The confirmed case is going to be either open for investigation or it's been closed by an arrest or something, but it's a case. It was a criminal matter that was reported to us. Now, whether it turned out to be a criminal matter or not is a different discussion, but it's a case that was investigated. Or is open for investigation. It's one of the two.
So is the historic data also reflective of that's just the number of cases that were opened at some point?
That's the number of cases that were in 2022, however many cases are showing there. That's the number of cases that we opened from 1 January through 31 December that had a nexus to this complex that were opened by my officers for some reported crime.
And when you say nexus, I appreciate that word, does that mean that not all of these cases involve students? Or is it the case that some of them involve
those
family
ones,
members of students?
Those are dealing with students because they were run by the juvenile code. They were run by what ages in IMC? How did you run those cases?
Some of them I had to read through the cases.
Yeah. So we read through every one of those cases.
So these are all student cases?
Yes.
What is endangering welfare child?
So somebody, either a parent or another child, did something to endanger the welfare of a child.
So if there's is a student being potentially charged with endangering, you're saying that doesn't apply to a student, but it...
No, that applies to a student. The student may be a victim. The student supposedly could be an offender, but it's probably an adult that did something to a child.
So it may be the case that not all of these are students? Help me understand. I'm trying to understand the data.
Chief, just real quick. There was a case, we had a couple of cases where one child endangered the welfare of another child within the school.
Okay.
So it's still a chargeable offense, even though it's still a juvenile on a juvenile.
Okay.
So in answer to your question, there may be some cases in there that deal with an adult that committed a crime against a child, and the nexus connection to the school is the disclosure happened here. So a good example of that might be child pornography.
Okay. So the disclosure happened in the schools.
The connection, yes, the connection is to this district in some way, shape, or form.
And does that account for the difference between, like there were not 88 incidents reported to the New Hampshire Department of Education that involved threats of safety, for example, last year from this complex. So does that account for the difference?
Okay, so yes, that accounts for the difference, and this is the problem I have with at the budget meeting. My cases are going to be completely different from the school's cases. Don't think of the school as a lesser included offense. There may be a case that we get, that we pick up here from a student here that happens in a completely different jurisdiction.
But those are also captured.
Oh yeah, they're captured here, okay? They're captured here. Because the disclosure gets made to an officer here, to one of the SROs, okay? So it could be even a case that occurred, for example, going back to a case that occurred a couple of years ago, we had a pretty horrific case. The disclosure happened here because of a relationship that was built with one of our SROs, but the crimes occurred in the state of Maine. We did the investigation as far as we could take it, and then we notified all of our federal, state, and in this case, Maine partners, and then forwarded the investigation to them for further investigation and possible arrest, whatever they do.
I appreciate your clarity on that, because this does paint a really terrifying image of our students' safety in our school. It makes it seem, based on this, that if 11 students have been sexually assaulted on campus, that's really concerning.
That's not.
And so, so this is why I'm asking these clarifying questions.
That's what we get involved with?
You're getting involved with it. You're hearing about it here.
Okay?
This is what
it's not a jungle here.
These are cases that originated that you're getting information about.
Yeah, that's
here.
just from
So-
emails walking into my office.
Somebody's walking in and they're telling you about
this
something.
happened in another town.
Okay.
That's their first disclosure.
Okay.
I take the initial report.
That reduces
I get
my
that person's
terror a
service.
little, thank you.
The other thing too, now, the other thing, and I'll just be direct and blunt, right? We do have incidents here of a lot of transmission of sexting and other images that's definitely tripping across the pornography statutes, okay? This is definitely child pornography. The problem is it's kids doing it to kids. All right? That's really bad. That's bad. And it's complex. It's a huge, complex investigation. We have to do some extraordinary, superhuman steps to try to pull those images, those videos back, those photographs back. We have to tag them. We have to see where it's going. We have to do the deep dive into that. And that is incredibly, those types of cases are incredibly resource intensive. And that's the other thing that I want to get at, right? This is so, you heard from the principals as to the role of the SROs. Building those relationships is critically important. And they can't do that, Mary can't do that, for example, if she is overwhelmed with 125 cases. That's an insane number of cases. And I'm just throwing that out there. So whether it's a case that someone feels comfortable enough, thank God, to come in and speak to her about something that happened in Maine 2 years earlier, or something that happened in another town, that's exactly why she's here, because that's protecting our kids, and it's keeping, if we can make an arrest on a violent offender, it's keeping not just our kids safe, but it's keeping other children safe. Thank you very much.
If I could just...
Okay, one more, and then we can kind of wrap it up, I think.
I appreciate, and what I heard from, I think, every single person here is that relationships matter. I believe that at my core, absolutely. I did a lot of digging into national data because I am a dork. But the narrative, the pervasive narrative, or the persistent narrative that comes out of a lot of research is that staff, administrators feel much safer with an SRO in the building. That's from a lot of large studies and seen here, seems to be very consistent. What's less consistent is how comfortable parents and students feel, particularly students. And there's a tension that a lot of students feel, and this is also in national research and in interviews. This is actually something that's being discussed at the Boston Public Schools right now, whether to add SROs because of the violence that they're seeing. Is this an appropriate response? They're wondering that too. So at all levels, I think this is something that boards grapple with, and it is absolutely split, and I'm honestly thankful that this is going to be in the hands of the voters, because there are students that have had very negative experiences with police officers that they're traumatized, and Not that you aren't exceptional people and aren't doing your jobs, but just because of the nature of what you have to do every day. And I think that needs to be appreciated, that students have to grapple with a conflicting narrative about this is a person I can trust, and yet if I say this to this person, something bad could happen to this other person. The relationships matter. I think it is, in all of my research, what I have seen is that an SRO program is not effective at making any sort of a change in a building's safety or outcomes related to discipline. But what does the modulating effect is the person in that position. The specific human being that occupies that position is what makes all of the difference in the world. And so I think, you know, in the MOU, it states that the chief of police, I think, has the final say ultimately on who is staffed. But if it is the individual person that makes all the difference in the world, if that is the factor that we want to affect change, then I think that the people should be able to weigh in on who that person is as part of a revised MOU potentially.
Just so you know, we've always, every time we've changed out SROs for whatever reason, you know, promotions, and, you know, and please understand, after, you know, X number of years up here, you know, 5, 6 years, I've got to move that officer out. Sure. And I've got to put a new one in, because their skills can get stale, and we don't want to build complacency, right? Yeah. So we want to rotate that officer out, keep them maybe different duties and responsibilities so they can improve to be able to move up to the rank of, you know, lieutenant or captain, or and eventually, you know, maybe someday become chief of police. So that's why we do that. But we always run our picks. We've always run those through the SAU administration. Yeah. So just so you know, so the school district, if you will, gets a bite of the apple.
Yeah.
Thank you. Steph, Tom has a couple of questions he'd like to ask.
Can I say one
more
thing?
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Just, it's regarding the MOU, which I hope we'll discuss at some point.
Yeah, if it passes by we'll discuss the MOU with the renewal anyway of the current position, and if the new position passes, we'll certainly revise the MOU completely. So, you know, we can take a look at that, but we don't have to discuss that tonight, really.
It was also, so it's relative to the MOU and also part of your testimony at the last point, which is a lot of discussion about active shooters, which is, I think, parents' biggest fear. It's my biggest fear as a parent. You know, what happened in December, Carrie, was terrifying when I found out about it. But there's no specific language in the MOU at all about active shooters or immediate threats even at all. And so I think just, I appreciate that that's part of the role, and I would love to make sure that there's at least some language in there pertinent to that specific threat, which is at the top of, I think, every...
Yeah, I think any of these documents, as you know, as we've gone through them, there's a lot of changes that need to be made, and we'll certainly discuss that and make the appropriate changes necessary.
And thank you so much for coming tonight.
Oh, my pleasure.
Tom.
Thank you. Heidi and everybody, thank you. I was one of the people that abstained last time. And I didn't abstain because I object to SROs by any means. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. I abstained because you came up with assertions, which I'm sure are true, but you didn't bring any evidence with you. You didn't bring any of the numbers that you've been telling us about. I would have expected that. Now you've answered some of my questions. I still have a question on the spreadsheet that you've recently offered us. And last time we were talking about, I think, 142 and then 20-something. That brought us up to 169, is that correct?
Those cases, yeah, those are cases.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that was confusing is because we were talking about incidents and events in cases, and now we're talking about offenses. And I'm looking at the number for this year, And I remember we met after first of this year, because you all came out for my birthday, and I appreciate that. But, well, thank you. I'm sure there's a simple answer to this. How did we get up to 198?
So those are offenses. So think of if it how many seconds in a minute?
60.
Okay.
60. Right. How many minutes in an hour?
60.
All right.
Is this going to go on?
Incidents.
Because you get much higher, and you lost.
Stay with me, counselor. Stay with me. All right. So you got cases, right? That's consider that an open investigation. That's a case. There's been a crime reported to a police officer. You know, presumably we'll take it here and report it here at this complex. Okay, so these officers are going to investigate it. One or two of them are going to investigate it. During the investigation, they're going to make a determination. Did this reported crime happen? Yes or no? If so, how many offenses, how many individual crimes occurred in this incident? Okay, there might be 3, 4, 5, 6 offenses, 6 separate crimes. Okay, so you have one incident, one case, 6 offenses. Okay, that's typically the way they go. Multiple offenses to an incident, multiple offenses to a case. Offenses are the common denominator. Right, we're going to break this down, just like infractions. Most common denominator.
We're going to fractions next?
You are.
I am not.
Did that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, but I really wished we had kept to common numbers, common phrases, and...
I know, it's confusing. My apologies, police jargon. You know, we deal with, obviously, the police science behind this. Our tracking software is set up for police officers. It's not easily digestible.
That makes it easy for you to see what offenses are happening in this general area. If you just need cases, yeah. So if you just need cases, that's how many cases they generated. 165 incidents cases, same thing. But those are the offenses that are happening within. So those are the kind of offenses. So
within Wolfeboro or within the...
Good complex.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what, I hesitate to ask, what are events versus incidents and how?
Events?
That's what we were talking about last time. We didn't even get into offenses. And I understand where you're talking about offenses because things generate off.
So an event might be something that, so for example, a crime is reported to a police officer. Okay, and this is standard for not just here but the town as well. Okay, crime gets reported, maybe for whatever reason, the report is specious and can't be verified, or the officer makes a determination, yeah, something happened, there was a disturbance there, but it doesn't rise to the level of a crime. There's no criminal intent, right? Culpable state of mind is not achieved. And therefore, they record it as an event, and the case is closed, right? But we track that, so you can pull that. So it's not, it's a case, right, of sorts.
Or is it an offense?
It's not, yeah, it's not a crime. It was an event that was recorded.
But is it an offense at that point?
Well, it'll be recorded as an offense, but no crime occurred.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so there'll be, it could be something like conduct after a crash, right? Hit and run.
Okay.
Common parlance, hit and run. Maybe it was determined something happened, but the officer can't prove it, or there's enough conflicting data to show that this person didn't hit person B. Sorry about it. I just needed you as an example. So does that make sense? So therefore, it gets recorded as an event. It's reported as a hit and run. That's the crime. That's the offense. Was investigated, but it becomes an event. Now later, maybe somebody comes forward with some cell phone data, or we pull a camera footage, or, you know, somebody's flying a drone overhead, and 6 months later, we get some different evidence that shows us, we open that back up, and it becomes a criminal matter, and we're doing a warrant, making an arrest, if that helps.
Okay, so I would have expected that the last time we spoke, when we were talking about both events and incidents, that we would have the same number.
Well,
Okay.
you guys, yeah.
You don't need to go through it.
Okay.
No, I think we're kind of getting, this is really more informational. Brody, let's wrap it up unless there's other people. that want
I
to
just
speak.
had 2 questions, and they're not even about, I mean, and I appreciate the apology. I didn't think apology was really even needed from you guys. You guys had your public meetings and everything. I mean, communication could always improve, but my question was more about our procedure. It wasn't about you guys' procedure. It was about our procedure, because, I mean, November 9th, I sat and we were kind of all in agreement at the Public Safety Forum. You know, GWRSD isn't going to be looking into an SRO at this time. And then we go through the hearings and everything, and our staff doesn't tell us that we need an SRO. We talk about staffing. We get to December 21st. I ask, you know, there's a warrant article in Wolfeboro about an SRO. Are we going to get an SRO? I'm told, no, we don't have a warrant article, and it's not at the consideration at the point. And then something changed between, you know, around Christmas to what were the conversations that were had, and what were the information that was received, whether it was through private conversations or formal meetings, that kind of that informed our administration everything, that this raised the level that we need to take immediate action to get a petition warrant. Because I think, I'd just love to know, because I just would want to understand what the ultimate reasoning was.
I can say a few pieces on that. I think that some of this, believe it or not, boils down to the fact that our budget process is on 2 different calendars. You know, I've talked to the chief many times now, and we realized that kind of like ships in the night about it. Because yes, I came to the commissioners meeting, I believe that was September, but that was more, to me, a panel and the community coming forward and talking about lots of different items, safety on buses, drugs, police, different. That was the case in September, and I appreciated that. I'd love to come to another one of those. But what I can speak for myself, I realized their process, we hadn't even started our process yet. And their process was in high gear, almost wrapping up, because they're ending by December. We are ending when the voters vote in March. So they were ramping up. We were in talks, just barely starting conversations with principals about budget. And then it was truly like ships in the night. So I do think, you know, all things being equal, that was a big part of it, you know, to your question about, you know, how did this unfold? I think that was a piece of it. The other piece I just wanted to mention while I have the floor is that, you know, now that this has really come to light, I really know that I can be the liaison for this communication. So between the police department and the board, I'm the liaison for most of your communication. But for this in particular, you know, I will have the monthly reports. This is something I'll share, you know, at a certain point, as well as a broader safety plan with the board. So as I said before, this is one piece in our safety plan. We have our task force meetings, we have SROs, facilities are a piece, training for staff. I'm going to make sure the board is aware of some of the training that Corporal Boucher is conducting and facilitating and leading for our staff. On Monday, January 30th, he's holding training for all the middle school and high school staff at 2:40, I believe, in the lecture hall. So anyone from our board who would like to attend, you're invited to attend and watch that. It's an initial presentation, PowerPoint, about this training that our staff is going to be a part of. And I think that is all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Yeah, one last comment.
One more, I promise. I'll leave a motion to adjourn after it. And I really appreciate.
I have to ask the question before we adjourn.
Okay, that's fine. Well, then I'll motion after you make your question.
Go ahead.
I really appreciate the understanding that that our budget process was later and we came to the realization much later. And, it's good that we'll be cognizant going forward. My last question is, are there plans right now to put a full-time or part-time SRO in the Wolfeboro Elementary Schools, in Crescent and Carpenter School?
Commissioner
I'll
Wood.
speak to that, Brody, because that came from the commission also. Corporal Boucher was hired by the commission after he retired as a full-time police officer in Wolfeboro. He was hired back as a part-time juvenile services officer. Those duties were then taken on by the state a year later. The state decided to move forward and get into diversion programs and so forth.
What we were doing.
Same thing we had,
County does it.
but we were ahead of we try to be forward thinking here, right? So rather than having redundancy, we repurposed his position to a juvenile services officer. I think this will speak to something too that Carolyn just mentioned. His position is not being funded by the school district. His position is being funded solely by the town of Wolfeboro taxpayers as a part-timer 42 Wolfeboro elementary schools. I say that because there's been some confusion. The other thing is that I want to speak to that Carolyn brought up, and she made my mind blow, is that he's training. We support that. We didn't hire him to do this. We're not paying him to do this. He's going to be paid to do it. We support that because of the importance of that training that he's going to conduct. He's going to conduct that training for all of the district staff.
Will he rotate to all the elementary schools?
Yes.
On a weekly basis?
No.
We
Town of Wolfeboro is not going to fund an officer to lead the town. Absolutely not. If the other district towns want to have a part-time SRO or some kind of program when an officer comes into school, that'll be entirely up to them. We did this for the schools within our community because the reason we wanted to do that with Corporal Boucher was that I learned as a young police officer the value of building relationships with students in schools. Because I used to do that. I've always loved kids, and I used to do it in the elementary schools in the community that I was in. When you start building these relationships, these trusts at a very early age, kids are a wealth of knowledge. They'll help you solve crimes. This whole see something, hear something, see something, say something has been going on a long time. And kids know stuff. They want to tell you what they know too. So there's a lot of positive things there. But the main onus on Corporal Boucher is to get them into the adult schools. One, is a deterrent from outside forces coming in for evil purposes. But more importantly, to build those relationships and those trusts early on that we want to carry up through middle and high school.
Okay.
This is strictly a Wolfeboro, part-timer in Wolfeboro.
I understand. I just have reservations when there's better protection in one community than some of our other member
We
communities.
only have to worry about Wolfeboro.
Brody, this is a different discussion that we need to have with the whole task force and all that, because when we had our first task force meeting, we had representatives from every police department within our district, including Middleton, and fire departments, police departments, the county sheriff was there. We had all those people there, and they understand that every community has to take care of themselves, however that's done. I think the training that's going to be done in the elementary schools is terrific. Beyond that, Tuftonboro has to step up to the plate. Effingham, Osby, however that's done, whether it's done with support from the county sheriff's department, whether it's done with support within their own police departments, however it's done, we want those relationships in all the elementary schools built as well. But this is not up to the town of Wolfeboro.
Brody, I can't go into, just so we're clear on
Yeah.
this, I can't go into Tuftonboro or Osby to do training if I'm not invited in by that chief of police. Okay?
No, that makes sense because it's out of your jurisdiction.
So what I said earlier to you, months ago, I am responsible for law enforcement in Wolfeboro. Everything that happens or fails to happen in this town relative to law enforcement is my responsibility. I take that very seriously. The chief in Oscar should be doing the same thing, the chief in Effingham, the chief in New Durham, and all the other district towns should be doing the same thing. They should be having conversations with those school officials and saying, hey, what can I do to make your school safer, so forth and so on. If they haven't done that, they probably need to. But I can't go into another chief's town. Same way the sheriff can't come in here and do law enforcement in my town without my permission, if that makes sense.
No, I understand, and I guess my ultimate point is, and I understand, you guys are being proactive, and that I appreciate as a
So we're
resident.
proactive.
I get
Those other
I
chiefs
get
have
that,
got to
but
step up to the plate, just as the chairman
yeah, but
said.
there are towns in this district, yeah, exactly what Stephanie just said. It's about financial means, and I just kind of think, if we want to have that community policing, it almost makes more sense to engage with a law enforcement agency that can go to every elementary school and do the community policing. I mean, we have...
I'm happy to speak to that.
Yeah.
So at our Safety and Security Task Force meeting, it was important to bring everybody in so that because of this point, in that, it's not likely that there would be an SRO in every town with very small schools. It's important to partner with the PD in those towns because they're part of those towns and they have a right to work together. So Tufton getting into Tufton Central School, New Durham into New Durham, and that's happening. So that is, and that's what we talked about. That's the partnership that is essential, that's so special, that I think that is the most effective, and it can still garner those relationships in those towns, rather than a model where you have one person going to all the towns. We already have people invested in those towns who already have connections with those principals and the kids and staff. So we want to support that however we can.
I understand and respect that 100%. I just wonder if folks in towns with less budgetary means are going to, and I appreciate the town of Wolfeboro taking the initiative, doing what needs to be done, but I just wonder if there'll be a perception that their children are less safe because their towns aren't stepping up to the plate and that they may be upset. That's
Well, I think that's a conversation that the SAU might want to have with those individual towns, and even somebody like myself. I'm the Tufton Borough representative. I can certainly meet with Chief Shiguri and have that discussion with him as well. And I think any board member that's from a particular town that wants to have a discussion with their police department can have that discussion about what they're willing to do to help with the safety in their elementary school. So this is all part of the task force discussions that we had, and certainly I think on individual towns, I think let the individual board members take a lead on some of this and talk to their police departments and see what they might be able to provide for support. And it doesn't have to be. Oh no, the thing, right?
Well,
yeah.
Our superintendent permits is allowed in the schools.
Right.
And so it would be, we could work with, but I just, it's not to punish you guys. You guys are going above and beyond.
Yeah.
And, that's admirable and that's great. You don't need to defend that. You guys are helping, build relationships with students and, create a better community. I just get concerned that other towns will start to feel maybe not even envious, but we'll just be upset that if he's like, here's Wolfeboro, the largest town, getting the best amenities.
You gotta understand that we're protecting their children too. They're here. They're in this complex.
I'm talking about the SRO specifically for the elementary.
Yeah, and
this one article is for an SRO in this complex.
Right.
Yeah.
Not for the elementary.
Right, and we're getting really off the track here, Brody. Yeah, listen, we're getting way off the track because this is about the SRO for the complex here. I certainly understand the concerns about the elementary schools, and I think we as a district have to look at how we want to handle that through the superintendent and maybe through the individual board members within those towns to reach out to the local departments and understand what their capabilities are. We're not. I would certainly never ask Chief Seguri to put an SRO in Tufton Borough Central School, but what can his staff support for that type of process on maybe a much smaller scale? You have 100, 110 kids in the class as opposed to between Carpenter and Crescent Lake 400 students. It's a different process. So every town is going to be different, every school is going to be different, every police department is going to be different. But I think working with the superintendent and an individual board member from that particular town might be very helpful to get that process started. So Charlene.
This is a very easy question for our superintendent and short and sweet. Would you please tell us who filed the right to know request regarding 118 books in our libraries?
It's not mine, I'll be happy to say. It's Rhonda. It's Rhonda Martin.
Rhonda Martin?
Rhonda Martin?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. I just wanted to know, and I was, well, I figured it was on the website, but I was being impatient, so thank you.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, any 91A requests that come into the district are posted on our website now with the requester, what they requested, the date that it was delivered, the date the material is available, and the date the material is reviewed. So we've made that a standard procedure with our 91A requests. So on that note, I'd look for a motion, before I ask for a motion to adjourn though. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This was an informational meeting for the SRO position. It's on the warrant. We supported it. We're hoping that the voters across the district also support it. So thank you for your time tonight. Now a motion for adjournment.
Yes, I make it.
I'll second.
You make it, all right. Stephanie made the motion, Brody seconded it. Tom? Brody? Stephanie? Dr. Jim? Jim Pittman? Charlene? And Chair votes aye.